Welcome back to the newspaper review on High Impact Television. We're still on the papers. Now, let's look at this court tribunals and their judgments. If you look at the Kaduna Tribunal judgment, it was upheld on technical grounds. And one would wonder, technical grounds, it's enough. That's what is being used to dismiss other petitions. So I really want to try and understand the dexterity of this particular judgment.
Probably, in order for us to get the dexterity and the way technical ground as an instrument of law is being wielded, probably let's look at this story, hopefully in detail with the little time that we have.
Yes.
What's he saying? It said in the lead judgment, I'm not starting, let's say, in the lead judgment, Justice Victor Oviawe said the preliminary notice was filed outside the time prescribed by the Constitution from the day when the result of the election was declared. Adding that the petition was deemed to be abandoned. His ruling was also seconded by Justice N. Nonye, while Justice K. Damblat disagreed with the ruling, noting that the preliminary notice was properly filed and not abandoned. This story is the major story on the Daily Trust newspaper.
Yes.
So, however, in compliance with the Supreme Court standing order, the tribunal delved into the substantive matter to look at the merit of the petition. Now, what's the substantive matter? The substantive matter borders on the main issue why some polling units in about 4 local government areas was declared or made the election to be declared there inconclusive. So where they are going with this is if they are going to conduct a new election in those 4 local government areas, or there's going to be another ruling that will rectify it. Okay, now we have our guest joining us. This is going to constitute one of our conversation with him too. Good morning, Dakpo Adaramewa, and welcome to the newspaper review.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. How are you?
Good morning.
Oh, very well. Thank you.
That's it.
Yes. Dakpo Adaramewa, we have 2 things to speak with you this morning. One is about what's happening in Kaduna State, where there has been a controversial, would I call it a controversial judgment or a controversial verdict, or a verdict that has made both the PDP and the APC to be, laying claims to the throne. And the other is what's about to happen on October 3rd, Tuesday, where the Nigerian Labour Congress has said no amount of plea, no meeting, neither do they have any agreement with the government that will make them shelve their strike. And this, most especially with the NLC, we are starting with the NLC. This has, brought out lots of things. It's generated public response to this. Let me know your opinion or your perspective on the labor strike on October 3rd.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Now, there's a thing we do in Nigeria as parents, when a child does something wrong, you will beat him. Then when he cries, you will beat him for crying. And I think that's pretty much what the Nigerian government is attempting to do to labor. Now, the people are suffering, and these palliatives that have been promised are yet to be delivered. I don't know about yourself and maybe a few of your viewers, but I myself have not seen anybody who has benefited from any palliative yet. And I know billions have been released. So a lot of promises were made at the start. I remember that televised interview that we received from Mr. President that outlined the roadmap of how we are going to, help Nigerians, help all of us cope with this. Now, unfortunately, we have not seen that. Now, an argument could be made on behalf of the government that, yes, these things take time, and you need to give the government enough time to put these things in place. But what we need as Nigerians is transparency. You see, if I'm hungry and there's no food in front of me, but I can see where the kitchen is and I can see they are preparing the food, it allows me to bear the hunger a bit more. Nigerians we have not seen these promises, and we have not even seen a roadmap to the delivery of these promises. Naturally, labor has to represent the interests of the people who are suffering
Okay.
and must demand more action from the government. And that is what we are seeing. So the government has two choices. Either give us what you have promised, or at least create a clear roadmap of transparency so that people understand what is coming to them, what is, the different areas, all the things that were outlined, the buses, the refinery, where are we with the refinery? How many, what percentage of refurbishment has been done? Is there anything that Nigerians can see and at least give them this, what we were promised was renewed hope?
All right.
Give us renewed hope.
Sorry to interrupt you again because of our time. Dr. Adaramewa, it looks like Labour has sworn that in this particular strike action for October 3rd, they are not going to back down. The Labour leaders said they are willing to go to prison because they feel the government has threatened. Lateef Fagbemi, who is the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, has reminded Labour of a subsisting court order barring them from going on strike, and that ignoring the court order and going on strike will amount to the breach, contempt of court, which is a serious order. And on the other part, it looks as if the government, through the National Economic Council, is pleading with Labour to shelve the strike. It appears as if the government is speaking from the two sides of the mouth. Where do you think this is leading us to, or Labour? Do you think Labour going ahead and bearing the consequences?
Yeah, I think if there's one thing we have learned through history, is that oftentimes going to prison for what you believe to be a noble cause, in fact, endears you to the public. So I don't think the government should be quick to try and make martyrs out of anybody or try to make anybody a celebrity and even rally the cause around them, because throwing anybody in prison would have a very counterproductive, effect. And on the part of the Labour, I would say saying that no amount of begging, no amount of meetings, will make us change our mind is probably not progressive. Because if in effect what you are saying is that even if the government, gives us what we want, we will still go on strike. And that begs the question of why are you even going on strike? Well, I think both sides are just roaring, to try and intimidate each other. But there's a need for calm, because at the end of the day, despite all of these meetings that we're having in air-conditioned rooms, the lives of Nigerians are at stake. People are suffering while we are debating all these things. So it's important that both parties calm down and try and find a way out, and keep in mind who is the most important person in all of these negotiations, which is everyday Nigerians like yourself and I.
Okay. All right, Mr. Adaramewa, I want to take your mind to this carrot and stick approach coming from the federal government. Now, the National Economic Council is begging, governors are begging, but the Attorney General of the Federation is threatening them with a contempt of court charge. Now, so my question now is, if the Attorney General invokes this contempt of court, what would happen? I know the labor union has said they are prepared to go to prison, but you think the federal government are willing to invoke this injunction on them?
I don't believe it would be, if I was advising, I wouldn't say it's a wise decision. Again, if you throw them in jail, you will, and in fact, the average Nigerian that might not have been fully behind them will rally around them fully, because they will be like, for the first time, we are seeing somebody who is willing to sacrifice themselves for Nigeria, which is something we don't see from our politicians anymore. Gone are those days that our politicians were putting themselves, their lives, and their well-being on the line for ordinary Nigerians. Now, the only time they ever do that is to gain more power. So if you go ahead and you make them into celebrities, you will rally around Nigerians around the cause. And in fact, you don't know how far it will go. Nigeria is literally sitting on Kindle. People are boiling and raging inside, and you just don't know what will be the trigger. And if the federal government is wise, they will find a way to resolve this without making it go any further. Because again, You cannot start a fire and be sure how it will end. If Nigerians go to the streets with the level of pain, hunger, and suffering that people are going through, you do not know how it will end. It could very well end in riots. For all we know, nobody knows where it will end. So let us not tow a path that we cannot guarantee the end of.
Okay, let's look at the people themselves, the masses. There's been not sort of a 100% support coming from the people. Maybe it could be from past, occurrences whereby the labor union would say they are going on strike, and at the dying hour, the strike is being called off, saying the federal government has negotiated and all that. So the people are not in sync with the labor union. What could be done to sort of like bring them back together as one to support the labor, because the labor union are fighting for the people. They are not fighting for themselves. They are fighting for the people.
If anything, if the labor union really wanted to really get Nigerians to rally around them, then they will continue and they will face the consequence of the worst that the government has to offer. Because again, it will still send that signal to everybody that, listen, we are fully behind you. They might lock us in jail, they might persecute us, they might do this, but for the first time, you now have people who are willing to sacrifice themselves for you. So if anything, the labor's dream right now should be that the federal government should dare put them in prison. In fact, in their meetings, I'm sure they are willing, because at the end of the day, we very well know, except you want to, completely collapse the country, there's nothing you can really do to harm them. You might lock them in jail for a month or 2 months in the hopes that, maybe Nigerians will just forget about them. That's a possibility. But what if it goes the other way around? I don't believe it's a high stakes game. And again, the chips that are being played with are the lives of Nigerians. But the truth is, the suffering in the country is too much. People need relief. And the government needs to find a way to offer that. The trillions that we are saving from the fuel subsidy, where are we going to put it? And how is it going to impact the lives of Nigerians? Again, earlier at the start of all of this, I was interviewed on a station. And I said the problem is that we have a government who stepped and made decisions and is then dealing with the consequences. We had that for 8 years. We had the Naira redesign. You take steps, and then when the chips fall, you try and scramble and pull it all together. That is a terrible way of governance. You must plan. It is part of your policy planning that you must lay out how you're going to enact certain policies, then how you're going to cope with the repercussions of the actions you are taking. And if at this point, this government has still not understood that, then I fear for what will come for the next 4 years. It is time that government start being proactive. When you plan to take an action, you must know that each action has an equal reaction. So you take a step like removing fuel subsidy. What do you expect us to do? Just accept that, basic things have more than tripled in cost, and the cost of transportation and being in Nigeria has almost tripled the cost. And so somehow we're all supposed to just manage. What are private businesses supposed to do? Where are we supposed to? Are we supposed to double the cost to our customers, or are we supposed to leave our staff hanging in the dry? What exactly is the plan?
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Dakbo. Now, before we let you go, we need you. Let me take you to Kaduna State, where the governorship tribunal, the governorship election petition tribunal just released the result, and it's some sort of controversy. Two judgments two verdicts or two judgments in two cases were given. One on the substantive, and the other one had to do with the time frame of when an appeal was filed. I'm sure you are aware of the judgment that came out recently from Kaduna State.
Yes, it's very unfortunate.
Please go on. Express your perspective
I said
on it.
It's very unfortunate because when one comes down to look at these things, the whole idea of going to court is to get clarity.
Yes.
Right? We have an issue. We cannot resolve it among ourselves. We go to the court. We go to the judges to give us a clear and clean verdict as to what what the resolution is or what the conclusion on a certain matter is. Now, to think that now we have come back from the courts, and in fact, the confusion has even gotten worse, is just shameful. It is a woe and an embarrassment onto the judicial system, because we should have clarity by now, because the matters are so conflicting that if I brought 3 lawyers into this room, into this setting right now, we will probably have 3 different opinions as to what exactly the judges were trying to say. So it's a very confusing matter, and it's very dangerous as well.
So where do we go from here? When the PDP is laying claim to the throne and the APC is, laying claim as the incumbent, and that the judgment actually favored them in power. Where do we go from here? Since do we just wait for the appeal and see how it's going to turn out?
It would be dangerous for us to wait for the appeal, because what you are now creating is a lacuna in power, in which each party feels they have a right to the state, and that just creates chaos. Now, how does that chaos now translate to things on the streets? We've seen incidences where, in the NURTW, one faction is coming into another faction's office and pushing out that faction. What if that's happening at the local government level? What if 1 or 2 local government chairmen for one party should move into the local government office and push out the other one, bring weapons or whatever it is they need to displace those people? How does this affect, the police system, the policing of the state? Because we cannot pretend that we don't know that certain factions within these security apparatus align themselves with different factions. How would all of this translate and play out if we decide that we are going to wait for it to go through the appeal process? I think the judges need to come back to the table and provide clarity in one voice as to what exactly they're trying to say before we then start the appeal process. Yes, of course, the appeal process will run its course, but let us understand exactly what you are trying to say right now as to what is the status of the governance in that particular state.
All right, quickly before you go, sir, I wanted to ask you about this report coming from Daily Trust, how banditry raises food price in Zamfara. I just want to get your reaction based on this and the whole banditry affecting the country.
Yes, it is, it is shameful that, most of the food that we produce in Nigeria goes to waste. It is not new, and it's been an ongoing problem. Farmers don't want to go to the farm because they do not feel secure. Those who do go to the farm are extorted, kidnapped, and killed. And we as Nigerians, unfortunately, have lost our understanding of the value of human life. Because you will see a news report, 20 killed in so and so state, and it doesn't seem to shock anybody anymore. And that's dangerous. And it's affecting us. It's causing the food prices to go up. It's further worsening the economic conditions of the country. And here's the vicious cycle about it all. As the economic conditions of the country get worse, you are driving, or shall we say, you are making more and more young men vulnerable to being inducted into these vicious gangs and all these things, because they just don't have the means to live. They're not educated. And so it becomes a vicious cycle where one arm is creating itself, and it goes on and goes on like that.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Adaramewa. Thank you very much for the powerful discussion we had this morning. We do appreciate your indulgence.
Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yes, the thing about that, the thing about the judgment, it's for the purpose of time, I think we'll have to go. But that thing about the Kaduna judgment, because the second thing that had to do with the judgment of 10,000 votes, over 10,000 votes, being higher than the amount of votes that one of the parties used in beating the other. So 2 of the judges, when they voted, went like the elections were inconclusive in 22 polling units.
That was where the first report was the election was declared inconclusive.
Then we heard it. So it's very, very controversial. And like he said, the judges will need to come back and not to just clarify, but if they cannot sit on the same matter again, I believe the Court of Appeal will give a the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court will have to give a clarity to that.
I'm waiting to see that clarity.
Kaduna State.
All right, this is where we wrap up today's edition of the Newspaper Review. Thank you very much for joining us from Monday all through till Friday. See you next week. I'm Olumide Shokoya. Thanks for watching.
And I'm Oyin Priye Kurumale. Do have yourself a splendid weekend.